I want to tell you about a mistake I made with Roscoe. We'd been working on door manners. He's a dog who bolts, or he was, and I had decided we were going to fix it. So I drilled it. Same door, same command, same sequence, every time. Sit, wait. Okay, and he got it. In that context, with those words, at that door, he was perfect. Then one afternoon, I was carrying groceries, and my hands were full, and I nudged the door open with my hip, and Roscoe shot out like I'd never taught him anything. I stood there in the hallway of our condo building, groceries in my arms, watching him skid to a stop at the elevator, and I thought, what exactly did I teach him? I had taught him to respond to a specific routine. I hadn't taught him anything about doors. This is Under the Same Roof. I'm Jennyfer Tan, certified family dog mediator and professional dog trainer, and this is episode 2. Last episode, I talked about the framework that changed how I understand both my son and my dogs, the L.E.G.S. model, learning, environment, genetics, and self. And I talked about what it means to stop expecting compliance and start building genuine understanding. Today, I want to go deeper into the learning piece, because I think there's something most of us are getting wrong. Not out of negligence, but because nobody ever explained how learning actually works for a nervous dog or a neurodivergent child in a world that keeps changing around them. The short version is this: knowing something at home is not the same as knowing something. Here's something that happened with my son constantly when he was younger. We'd practice a social skill at home. Say, greeting someone. He'd do it beautifully. We'd rehearse it, refine it, feel good about it. Then we'd go somewhere, and it was like it had never happened. A classmate would say hi, and he'd stand there frozen. Not because he was being rude, but because the script he'd learned didn't match what was in front of him. The classmate said, "Hey," not "hello." They were standing to his left, not in front of him. The hallway was loud. The variables were different, and the skill he'd practiced didn't travel. Every family I work with who has a reactive or anxious dog has lived some version of this. Your dog sits perfectly in the kitchen, on the sidewalk, with another dog across the street and a skateboard going by. The sit doesn't exist. It's gone, and it can feel like the training didn't work, or like your dog is stubborn, or like you're doing something wrong. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is that your dog learned a behavior inside a very specific set of conditions. And when those conditions change, especially when stress enters the picture, access to that behavior drops away. This is the learning piece of L.E.G.S. in action, and it's something I wish someone had explained to me much earlier, as a trainer, as a mediator, and as a parent. When I first started working seriously with Roscoe's reactivity, I did what most of us do. I found a response I liked, and I drilled it. Same spot in the living room. Same treat pouch. Same time of day. Same sequence. Until he could do it reliably. And he could. Reliably. In that spot. At that time. With that sequence. What I was actually creating was a dog who had learned that the safest strategy was to wait for instructions. Because instructions were always the same. Because the environment was always the same. Because I'd accidentally trained him to perform. In one context, not to think across contexts. I saw the same thing happen with my son when people drilled academic skills without varying the format. He could answer a math problem in one layout, but if the numbers were arranged differently on the page, he'd be completely lost. Not because he didn't understand the math, because the presentation was part of what he'd learned, not just the concept underneath it. Dogs trained through heavy repetition in controlled settings become what I'd call contextually dependent. They're not stubborn. They're not defiant. They've just learned that behavior belongs to a place, a time, a specific set of cues. Take those away, and there's nothing left to stand on. And for a nervous dog especially, a dog already spending a lot of mental energy scanning for threat, that kind of fragile behavior collapses fast under stress. Because stress takes up bandwidth, and when the bandwidth is gone, the carefully drilled response goes with it. The word that therapists and educators use for what I was missing is generalization, and it sounds technical, but the idea is simple. Generalization means that a skill travels. It works in more than one place, with more than one person, under more than one set of conditions. It means your dog has internalized the concept, not just memorized the cue. The teams working with my son over the years taught me that you build generalization by deliberately changing variables. You practice the same skill in different rooms, with different people at different times of day. You introduce small differences slowly, so the brain learns. This thing I'm doing isn't attached to this specific chair or this specific voice. It's attached to a meaning. When I started applying that same approach with Roscoe, something shifted. Instead of practicing door manners at one door with one sequence, we practiced at every door in the condo. The front door, the closet, the bathroom. I practiced when I was calm and when I was carrying things and when I was distracted and when we were running late. I practiced when he was relaxed and, carefully, when he was a little more wound up. The goal wasn't to get a perfect sit. The goal was for Roscoe to understand a concept. When a door opens, I pause and check in. Not because I was told to right now, but because that's what doors mean. That's a different kind of learning entirely. This is also where the E in L.E.G.S becomes impossible to ignore. Because even if a skill is genuinely generalized, environment still matters. Stress still matters. The body's capacity to access what it knows changes depending on what the nervous system is dealing with. My son could use his social skills beautifully in a quiet, predictable setting and completely lose access to them in a loud cafeteria after a long day. Not because the skill wasn't there, because his nervous system was overwhelmed, and there was nothing left over for social performance. Roscoe is exactly the same. On a quiet morning, on a familiar stretch of sidewalk, he can hold himself together when we pass another dog at a distance. The same dog, same distance, same sidewalk, at the end of an overstimulating afternoon. Different story. His threshold has changed. What he can handle has narrowed. So part of teaching skills that generalize is also learning to read the environment your dog is in right now. Not the environment you practiced in. Not the environment from yesterday. Today, this walk, this moment. How much bandwidth does he have? When Roscoe is already over threshold, I don't ask him to perform. I make it easier. I create distance. I go back to something simple that he can succeed at. Because asking a dysregulated nervous system to access a complex skill is like asking someone to do long division while their house is on fire. The math is still in there. It's just not available right now. So, what does this actually look like in practice? With Roscoe, I've been working on shifting from commands to concepts, and the distinction matters more than it might sound. A command is, sit when I say. Sit. A concept is, calm behavior gets you what you want. A command is, come when I call. A concept is, checking in with me keeps you safe, and good things happen when you do. A command is, don't lunge at other dogs. A concept is, when you're nervous, looking at me is an option, and it works. Commands require me to be there, giving instructions, in the right moment. Concepts go with him. They're his, not mine. With my son, the parallel was learning the concept of greeting people, not just learning to say hello to Mr. Vines. Once he understood what greeting was for, what it communicated, why it mattered, He could figure out what to do when someone said, "Hey," instead of "hello." When the context was different, when the script didn't fit, he had the concept. He could work with it. That's what I want for Roscoe. Not a dog who waits for me to tell him what to do when he's scared. A dog who has a strategy he can reach for on his own. I want to be honest about something, because this kind of work is slow, and it doesn't look like what we've been taught progress should look like. Last week, Roscoe saw another dog across the street and stayed mostly calm. Tense, but not lunging. That was a good day. 2 days ago, a dog came around a corner and surprised us, and he lunged. That was a hard moment. But here's what I noticed. He recovered faster than he used to. And after the lunge, after the dog was gone and the moment had passed, he looked at me. He checked in. That is the skill. Not the perfect response, but the recovery and the check-in afterward. That's the concept generalizing, even imperfectly. My son's social learning looked exactly the same. 2 steps forward, 1 step back, a beautiful interaction one day, and a complete freeze the next. But over time, over years, the pattern shifted. The recoveries got faster. The check-ins became instinct. The concepts became his own. Progress with a nervous dog is not a line going up and to the right. It's more like a tide. Some days it comes in further than others. Some days it pulls back. But the average, over time, moves. The only way to see that is to stop measuring success as perfect performance and start measuring it as growth in capacity. There's one more piece I want to name, and it's the S in L.E.G.S. Self, the individual. Roscoe is a terrier lab poodle mix with a nervous system that gets overwhelmed easily. That's not a problem to be solved. That's who he is. And the skills I'm teaching him have to be built around that reality, not in spite of it. For him, that means working right at the edge of what he can handle, not past it. It means making it significantly easier when I add something hard. It means celebrating the moments when he tries, not just the moments when he succeeds. When he's tense but doesn't lunge, that's a win. When he barks and then looks at me, that's a win. The trying counts. My son needed the same thing. He needed tasks calibrated to the edge of his capacity, not designed to expose the limits of it. He needed credit for effort, not just outcome. He needed to know that the attempt itself mattered. When we honor who our dogs actually are, when we work with their genetics and their nervous system and their individual histories instead of against them, the teaching doesn't feel like fighting anymore. It feels like collaboration. It feels like building something together. I think about that moment in the hallway sometimes. Roscoe at the elevator. Groceries in my arms. The question hanging in the air. What exactly did I teach him? It was an honest question, and the honest answer was, I taught him a routine. I hadn't yet taught him a concept. We're getting there. Slowly, at his pace, with a lot of backing up and rebuilding and trying again. And the thing that keeps me from getting frustrated on the days when it feels like we're going backwards is remembering that this is how real learning works. Not just for dogs, for all of us. My son didn't learn to navigate the world by memorizing scripts. He learned by building concepts he could carry into situations nobody had prepared him for. That took years. It took patience that I didn't always have. It took a lot of moments where I had to choose between pushing harder and backing up. Almost every time, backing up was the right call. That's the work. Not drilling until it's perfect. Teaching until it's theirs. Next episode, I want to talk about something that trips up almost every family I work with, and that I've lived through myself more times than I can count. The moment when something that was working stops working. When a skill that felt solid suddenly disappears. When you look at your dog or your child and think, Did we go backwards? Did I do something wrong? Are we starting over? The answer, almost always, is no. But understanding why takes a closer look at how nervous systems actually work. And that's what we're getting into next time. I'm Jennyfer Tan. This is Under the Same Roof. Understanding before strategies? Always.